In this corner, the MAFEX Hush Batman, and in this corner, the totally not Knightfall Knight Crusader Batman. We've looked at McFarlane's blue and gray, we've looked at McFarlane's black and gray, now it's time to see which Medicom is better in my very first MAFEX only versus. Starting with the packaging, and both figures come in those wonderful MAFEX window boxes, but they do have a couple of asterisks. I got my Hush Batman loose at a toy show, and unfortunately he's missing that front piece of the bubble. As a result, he's kind of flopping around in the box. And Knight Crusader's box was damaged in shipping. Mind you, the shipping box is absolutely perfect, meaning it was beat up like this and they gave it to me anyway. Opening it up for a second and just look how mangled the inside is. I got this one from Hobby Link Japan, and that's never happened to me before. Still, given how expensive these are and the fact that I do keep MAFEX boxes, I am just a little bit annoyed. That said, both of these are very solid. Each one has a picture of Batman in the corner, but whereas Crusader just has a kind of generic Batman logo, Hush has this really great story-specific branding. Considering that Knight Crusader is very clearly Knightfall, it's a shame that they didn't do that here. In fact, throughout this video, I accidentally called him Knightfall a lot. Even so, I really admire just how consistent MAFEX is from release to release. Flipping around, and both have lots of wonderful pictures showing you all the accessories and options. We've got our tried and true witness protection teddy bear and non-reproducible hologram stickers to let you know that it's official and not a bootleg. Both boxes are excellent, and this could easily be a draw. That said, I really do appreciate just how story-specific Hush is. For packaging, this round goes to Hush. Moving on to presentation and the tops of their scalps, both Batman stand at 6 1/4 inches. This is scarcely surprising, as there's a lot of shared sculpting between the two. For example, the upper arms are pretty much identical, as are the hands, but the forearms are slightly different between the two. Hush Batman has short angular fins, whereas Knight Crusader has long curvy ones. Additionally, the legs are the same, with the boot tops being higher and swoopier on Knight Crusader. The faces are similar but not exact, by which I mean the general facial structure's there, which is cool because it does feel like it's two versions of the same guy. The main difference is being the cut of the mouth hole and the length of the ears. And we'll be talking a lot more about ear length and playability. As far as the plastic components of the figure is concerned, the biggest difference between the two are the torsos. On the Hush figure, the musculature is there, but it's a bit softer, whereas Knightfall really etches out all the lines. Additionally, while Hush has that simple black bat logo, Knightfall has that yellow oval. The paint's a little bit smudgy on this side, and while there is sculpting for the black outline, they didn't choose to paint it. Not gonna lie, I kinda wish that they had. Speaking of paint, there's a lot of nice shading throughout, just some nice dark grays to bring out the musculature. Same thing with the blues. Knight Crusader has that as well, but overall it's a much glossier figure. Naturally, he has that classic style capsule belt, whereas Hush has a more muted pouch belt. One thing that's interesting is that the feet are very similar, but if you look closely, they did get rid of some of the detail in Knight Crusader. Also, as usual, MAFEX figures don't have peg holes on the feet so as not to interrupt the sculpt. Of course, the biggest difference between the two are the capes. In terms of functionality, we'll talk more about that in playability. As for presentation, though, I'm gonna be honest, I never really cared for Hush. There's just so much cape here that it completely swallows the figure, and the way that it bunches around the collar is just really distracting. By contrast, Knight Crusader has what I think is a more manageable amount of cape, and they mitigated the bunched up collar with a plastic piece. We're going to talk more about the shoulders and playability, but overall it's very similar to the way the 2003 Mattel line handled it. In general, this is a happy medium. Of course, you do have less display options, and you can't do that classic Batman fully closed cape look. The real downside, though, is how gappy that makes him. Even pushing the shoulders up as high as you can, it's very jarring. On that subject, the diaphragm of both figures are pretty gappy, and mine has some very unfortunate paint rub. Quality control issues aside, Knight Crusader is solid, but suffers from the gappy shoulders and glossiness. Hush, by contrast, has softer details and a nice matte finish which just feels more premium, and even though I don't love the bunchiness of the cape, he simply has a more commanding presence. For presentation, this round goes to Hush. Moving on to posability, and this is one of the very best parts of looking at a MAFEX figure. And not surprisingly, you'll find that there are a lot of similarities between the two. From the top, and both heads are on dumbbell joints. MAFEX puts a little bend in the dumbbell. That's to give it an even deeper bend. They also have ball joints at the base of the neck. Utilizing all that articulation, they can look up this high and this far down, which is really impressive. Thanks to the extra joint, they get a great amount of tilt, and of course all the way around. Moving down, they only can raise their arms this far, with Hush being much higher between the two. That's because of this extra wide shoulder piece getting in the way. Both figures have rotator cuffs. They also have bicep swivel, matching double jointed elbows with matching bends, and wrist balls that can swivel and hinge in any direction. Moving to the middle, and both figures have a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. I know the capes kind of get in the way, but they can arch back this far. Again, they're both very gappy. Also, lest we forget this. And again, the capes are in the way, but they can hunch forward this far. That system allows for a wonderful amount of tilt and twist at both the diaphragm and the waist. Below the utility belts in both Batman have drop-down ball-jointed hips. Utilizing that drop-down, they can kick this high and split this wide. They don't have thigh cup, but there's an extra ball inside the hip that allows for a really great amount of twist. And then moving down the leg, they have double-jointed knee with equivalent bend. It's worth noting that that paint just chipped on the Knight Crusader. But then moving all the way down, both figures have toe articulation and ankles that can swivel, hinge, and like my enthusiasm for Knight Crusader, the deeper I go into all these paint scuffs, pivot. The articulation is near identical, but that extra high arm raise gives one of these figures an edge. For posability, this round also goes to Hush. Moving on to playability, and both Batman share a lot of hands, so we're gonna start there. The Knight Crusader ones come on these little trees. The Hush ones actually don't, making me wonder if there was even a lid on this tray to start with. First things first, they share a pair of relaxed hands. They also share a pair of open hands, but you notice something? The left hand on Nightfall isn't open. In fact, it's identical to the relaxed hand. I'm assuming that means I was accidentally given two of the same and that this is yet another defect in mine. They also share a pair of these hands, which on the surface looks like another set of fists, but if you look closely are actually very, very tight accessory holding hands. Lastly, each one comes with a pair of more trigger style accessory holding hands, though in fairness the fingers have been slightly repositioned between the two. Otherwise, Hush has a set of these really cool miniature claw hands for when he wants to shred some chicken. Hush also has not one, but two grapnel gun hands. Additionally, he has two separate grapnels. There's a short one that plugs in like so and reminds me a lot of Batman Forever, and then there's a long one on a metal pole perfect for holding its shape. This has got to be one of the coolest Batman accessories ever. That's not all though, he also has batarangs in two separate styles. Switching over to Knight Crusader for a moment though, and he has these hands that look like they're made for flying, but they're actually made for swimming. In fact, he comes with an alternate head with a respirator and an extra cape-free cowl piece. Now remember in packaging when I said that this is obviously supposed to be from Nightfall? Here is the literal panel from Nightfall number 10 where they got this idea. Also, Medicom, if you're watching, could you please give us this Supergirl as part of your Return of Superman line? Out of context, it kind of looks like he has a binky. Joking aside though, this is a great attention to detail. That said, the lack of cape really does highlight just how gappy those shoulders are. Not to worry though, this Batman comes with a completely separate extra cape. If like me you're not a big fan of the pointy shoulders, you've got a completely separate option. And honestly, I like this one a lot better. And hey, he even has an extra deranged, extra long-eared head option. Going back to the cover of Nightfall number 1, and it is unmistakable. Now if only anyone would give us a Mad Hatter. This is probably as good a time as any to revisit the capes in general. I might not love how they're integrated into the sculpt. To be honest, I think McFarlane does a much better job in that department. But you can't argue with the quality or the quantity. Not only the outer edges of the capes wired, each one also has wires inside as well. This allows for a wide array of various dynamic posing options. I may have commented that the Hush cape is swallowing the figure, but just look at what an incredible shelf presence it has. And for Medicom to have given us two wired capes in one box is such a value. Hush has an alternate Grimace head and an unmasked Bruce Wayne head, which is a pretty rare treat. For those wondering, I was not able to get the Bruce Wayne head to click into place on Knight Crusader. I did hit it with some heat, but it was fighting me so much I was kind of afraid of breaking it. If you've had any luck pulling a switcheroo, let me know in the comments. If all that wasn't enough, Knight Crusader comes with a batarang and bat rope. Instead of a string, it's actually a bendy wire layer so it'll hold its shape. And lastly, both figures come with a dynamic MAFEX flight stand. But playability is more than just swappable parts, wired capes, and flight stands. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Starting with a few other Batmen, and here's the Kenner Legends of the Dark Knight, definitely in that Knight Crusader vein. For something a little bit closer to Hush though, and here we have the Mattel S3 sculpt, as well as Detective Batman from DC Universe Classic Series 1, and then just because they're similarly sized, here's DC Icons from DC Collectibles, the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Nightfall, and the DC Multiverse Hush. Coming back down to Earth for a bit more of a reasonable 6-inch scale though, and here we have the 2003 Mattel Robin, and then here's Tim from the DC Direct Titans wave, but for something a bit more retro, and here's Dick Grayson from DC Universe Classics. Rounding out the team, and I don't have the MAFEX version of Nightwing, but here's the DC Icons one, and the Batman Legacy Barbara Gordon Batgirl. Moving back over to MAFEX, and here's the villainous Hush himself, as well as the cunning Catwoman. Hopefully MAFEX gives us a Nightfall version, because this DC Essentials one is a hair too big. Otherwise, here's the MAFEX version of Harley Quinn. If the MAFEX is a bit out of your reach, here's DC Icons. I don't have the MAFEX Joker, but I do have this one by DC Universe Classics. And then for just a few other villains who appeared in Hush, here we have Two-Face. This one is by Mattel and absolutely not inspired by how he looked in Hush. In that one, he actually had gotten rid of his second face. Likewise, and here's my smudge-faced, bow-legged DC Universe Classics Riddler. Of course, in Hush, he was wearing his nice leprechaun suit. While we wait for our MAFEX pre-orders to be fulfilled, here's the Mattel version of Scarecrow, and the Hush Scarecrow from DC Direct. Finishing things off with a couple of larger-than-life villains, though, and here we have the Mattel version of Clayface, and the Arkham Asylum 4-pack Killer Croc from DC Direct. That said, for a Marvel MAFEX, and here we have the classic comic book style Spider-Man, but for a relative scale comparison, here's Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. The swappable cape and alternate Kelly Jones style head is so cool. It's really like having two separate Batman figures in one. That said, the wealth of accessories Hush comes with is nothing to sneeze at. In fact, there's so much awesomeness packed in each box, I can't really say one is better than the other. For playability, I'm calling this round a draw. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. And this is where it really stings. Knight Crusader is a new release and retails domestically for $109, but given some of the quality control issues I've had, it's hard for me to fully endorse it. I'm willing to wager that my experience is a fluke, but still it's a very expensive fluke. Not as expensive as Hush though. I got mine at a toy show open box for $80, but on the aftermarket I see it going anywhere from $130 to $175. In terms of value in box, this is one of the best Batman figures I've ever seen, and if you can get him for a good deal, definitely get a hold of him. That said, for price, this round goes to Crusader, but the battle goes to Hush 4-2. Agree? Disagree? Sound off in the comments below and let me know which one you like better. While you're down there, let me know which version of Batman you hope MAFEX makes next. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.